Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the Kill Connor Club podcast, episode 79. I'm one of your hosts, James, and I'm joined, as always, by Tyler.
As always, how's it going, my friend?
It's going pretty good, pretty great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great.
Good, that's fantastic. Alright, and today we're joined by a very special guest, as you can see by the title, one I'm pretty excited for. And that guest would be Colin Moriarty. How's it going, Colin?
Good, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite, and I'm sorry. You guys had actually asked me, I think, to do this once before, not too long ago, and I just spaced. So I'm glad we were able to make this work.
No, it's all good. We were willing to wait as long as it took to get you on this podcast. So with a lot of people, we've had messages for like 2 years for people like, can you guys get Colin on? Can you guys get Colin on? We're like, oh, we don't know if we could get Colin on, but here we are. So we appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. Do you guys record remotely and then record your own tracks, or are you guys like in a studio together?
Oh, we've recorded remotely. Like James and I have done this show together for 4 years, and we've never met in person.
Yeah. It's
wow, that's wild. That's awesome.
Cool. We met because we both started. Because this podcast started being like an Assassin's Creed podcast at the beginning. That's why it's named Kill Connor Club. Connor being the main character of Assassin's Creed 3, the American Revolution game.
Yeah.
And we got on a podcast together because we were both smaller channels. Like I think I had like less than 2,000 subs. James had like 4,000. And we did like this live stream before Assassin's Creed Unity. And then we had this chemistry. We had such a great time. And, 4 years later, and, we've got 2 podcasts to get different shows together, a Patreon and everything. Like it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's cool. I've heard of more than a few groups meeting in a similar way. And I think that's kind of one of the wild revolutions of the internet. So it's awesome that you guys do that. I was just curious about the semantics because I only record my podcast in person because I can barely figure out how to do that. So I don't. I'm like so technologically ignorant that like a person asked me to do a podcast with them a couple of years ago, and they're like, "All right, you have to record on your end and stuff." I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So thanks for making it easy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it is easy. Like we just record. I'll record this whole conversation because we've had times where I don't record and just James records like whoever's in the chat, and then his computer will crash and we lose the whole podcast. So for something like this, we're both recording to make sure even if James crashed, like I've got the backup recording sort of thing.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, it's good to be here with you guys, and it must be late where you are. So I appreciate you guys dealing with my schedule a little bit.
James is a little late, but you're nocturnal, James. So
it's only 11 though. Like we've done podcasts where it's been like 4 a.m. or whatever, and it's cool.
This podcast is brought to you by the great people over at patreon.com/asalways. So to thank a few of those people, we have King Richard III, Bullsack47, Tman or Travis, Billy, the Team Tynamite Captain Robertson, Josh Devillier, Damian, Casey Wood, Mario5380, Lumistrad, Josh Jordan, OllieTheDane, Ben or Modorox, TheHumbleWorm, Elstico91, Emil Katborg, Austin, Sjors, GdayItslaZer, Prudhvi Muvva, Julli, Adam Sundling, HBuzz12, SaggyTits, Jayce Medici, TheACMJS, James and Lad, Yazen, Joe the Sexy Boi Smith, Brian Ford, Connor Durose, Ginger Jared, Big Up Long-Eared Fox, George Walford and Fox, Joshua Mora, Gene, Marcus Blackburn, Seth, Oscar, Rabjai, Son of a Bitch, OG Doggo, Brendan, or BQ Overlord, and Pickflame 313. So if you like what you're listening to here and you want to hear more, just head over to patreon.com/asalways for $1. You can get exclusive podcast content over there, as well as, of course, normal access to every single Kill Connor Club we release to the public, including this one with Colin Moriarty. Yeah, well, I guess to start off with, Colin, it would be great, though we do have heaps of our audience that know exactly who you are, and we've talked about you and, Ruben and plenty of other people in the political space and gaming space on the podcast before, but just give others a bit of background of just who you are and Colin's last stand and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm Colin Moriarty. I for 14 years, 12 years, wrote for IGN, starting as a freelancer and intern, and then rose all the way up to senior editor of the site. And I left to co-found Kind of Funny, which is a popular YouTube channel and Twitch channel, and I did that for like 2 years and change. And then I kind of had a falling out with them over the nature of our content, kind of our direction, and started CLS. So yeah, CLS is just this kind of amalgamation of whatever I want it to be. And I'm lucky enough to have like a really hardcore and passionate fan base that kind of lets me explore different things, and so it's a pretty eclectic thing, and people are really enjoying it. And the newest podcast is Sacred Symbols, and people are like really digging it, and it's become really popular very quickly. So it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, so I love politics, I love games, I love entertainment and kind of social commentary. So it seems like it's right in your guys' wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's with this podcast and stuff we've done, to me and James, like you're our like number one wanted guest, because you've influenced this show a lot in the sense of, we were just into sort of gaming and stuff, and it was during the 2016 US election, and I live in Australia, James lives in the United Kingdom, like not really involved in the US at all, especially with politics, but it was so interesting for both of us. And when I was listening to sort of the kind of funny shows, and you would bring up sort of what's going on in the political race between Hillary and Trump, and that was the first sort of like, wow, this is actually interesting. Like, I always found politics boring. And then from there, when you left Kind of Funny and started Colin's Last Stand, we talked about that on this show and stuff, and it just pushed us a lot to then expand our horizons. Because of you, I was listening to Dave Rubin, and then I found Ben Shapiro and people like that just sort of like made me see different perspectives. And I know James is a lot the same.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm so pleased to hear that. I think that there's this kind of misconception around gamers and kind of nerds that they're one-dimensional, and that we only want to talk about video games, and we only want to have fun, and like talk about gameplay and talk and love everything, and that's just not who I am. And I just feel like it does us a great disservice to pretend that that's who we are. I know that there are some people like that, but gamers, like anyone else, are multidimensional and deep people that also like politics and also like sports and also like other things. And I feel like no one's really talking to them on their level almost. It's all like celebratory nonsense, a lot of it, and like shows that where no one has an opinion and no one dislikes anything or no one wants to make a stand. And I don't know. I'm glad it's not like my stuff's humongous and gigantic and super popular, but I've carved out a niche because I sound different. And I think that people are kind of losing, sight of the fact that there are lots of people that want more, and so I'm glad that you guys are providing that too.
Yeah. Well, like Tyler was saying, I think a lot of our direction with not just the podcast, but with, plenty of other things was a lot of, what you were doing when you were Kind of Funny, and then obviously with Colin's Last Stand. I think that sort of direction of, like you were saying, like a lot of people do just see sort of the gaming community as like one-dimensional and just sort of, just being like, oh yeah, gaming and all of this stuff. And I think what we do on Kill Connor Club, and as always, sort of allows the people that we've brought into our community through the main thing being gaming to just sort of access these other things that we do talk about, like being, whether it's like politics or sports or, whatever else it might be. Those people can enjoy that, and I feel like it breeds a better community, like a more real community than, people might enjoy, whatever else, but I think it sort of it can breed a more, genuine community between people when you sort of allow that sort of, variety and, that sort of access for people, I think.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that, it alienates some people, but I honestly, and I don't, I always kind of speak from the heart. Like, I think it usually only alienates kind of like small-minded or weak-minded people that don't want to hear about another person's point of view or a different perspective or have some texture and depth. And we're seeing a lot of that with the announcement, which is my episode of Side Quest, my YouTube show that I'm doing on Monday, is going to be about The Escapist, and the announcement that they made about being kind of an apolitical outlet, and how that's such a major disservice to the art form of video games and the way we talk about and consume and think about video games, and that a lot of this is the fault of a kind of monoculture in gaming that has just shoved one point of view down people's throats for so long that they'd rather hear nothing than hear just that anymore. And I think that like people need to expand their minds and open their minds. If you're alienated because someone is speaking from the heart about something else and you might not agree with them, then you need to like kind of open up a little bit and realize that you don't have to agree with everyone or embrace everyone to it's a little more worldly this way, don't you think? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and for sure, especially in gaming, I think, because I know for myself and James, who are, we're being, kind of right-leaning, conservative-leaning, politically speaking, in the gaming world, it's already a pretty only sort of feeling. Like, we've got lots of people that listen to us that are like that as well, but when we have interactions with, channels our size and reach our size, which isn't big, but like you said, you have your own little sort of carved out area. And when it comes to like companies that make games and stuff, I know we feel alienated a lot with just talking to people and people wanting to talk to us. We've had people get certain guests not allowed on the podcast because of who we are.
Yeah, it's. I've said it many times. I was going on Twitter yesterday too that, it's not for me to out people, but people would be really surprised if I just started listing names of people who hold conservative viewpoints or are Republican or just right leaning or pro life or whatever the case might be. It's such an unwelcoming. The gaming industry is becoming such an unwelcoming place for ideas and conversation, and it's not the fault of game devs. It's the fault of the media, and so it's little outlets like you and I don't do like crazy views either. I think you guys have more Twitter subs than I do. More YouTube subs than I do. It's the fact that people are running away. I was talking to someone about this recently. It's like when the automobile came about and people were still using horse-drawn carriages, they weren't drawn to the automobile because it was new. They were drawn to the automobile because it was better. And people are leaving, these websites for YouTube and Twitch, not because it's a new thing, but because it's better. They'd rather listen to podcasts than real people on Twitch channels and real people YouTubing and telling them what they think without corporate and personal connections that create massive conflicts of interest, etc. That's why, I really do feel like our side is actually winning. And I think that the reaction to the escapist being apolitical, not even coming out saying they're right wing, but literally coming out and saying that they don't want to be political, that being looked at as a political stance tells you everything you need to know about a decaying portion of the industry that is scared that they are losing. And it's because of honest conversations happening on outlets like this. So again, I think it's great. I think that it sows a lot of division amongst the games media, but I think that players themselves like this, and that's why you're finding an audience.
Yeah, I think speaking of on what you're saying, and maybe this is getting too deep, too quick, maybe on this podcast, but I've started to notice that I felt that way, especially not even in just gaming, but in general with so many great free thinkers out there in the intellectual dark web, I guess, and all those sort of things, that free thought is winning, though there's lots of outrage culture still there and everything like that. But sometimes, and even maybe with this James Gunn stuff, it's like, are now both sides playing by these dirty rules? Is it really, is the right or the conservative or that side, is everyone going to fight this fight with these sorts of, I guess, shitty ways of going about it? I don't know how to articulate it better than that, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's the James Gunn situation. First of all, I don't think James Gunn should have been fired for his comedy.
No.
And I think that I also came to the defense. I don't know how big it was in your guys' parts of the world, but when Kathy Griffin with her decapitating Trump kind of art set that she did, and Bill Maher kind of using some untoward language in describing something, if I recall, I think that's what it was, and other things. It's like people are just going after people, and maybe people need to back up and not have this witch hunt mentality with the ultimate worst possible outcome for people because they misspeak or they make a mistake, or you kind of impugn who they are based on these kinds of things. And I said it, and it got thousands of retweets and thousands of favorites. It's hysterical to me watching these same people. It's not the same group of people or similar people or a similar thing. These same people that tried to ruin my life, that tried to steal my livelihood and destroy my reputation because I told a joke about my girlfriend talking too much, are the same people defending James Gunn because he told on orders of magnitude worse jokes than I've ever said. And they're now scared, and afraid that the shoe's on the other foot. And it's like, well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And the hardest thing, I went out with a friend of mine a few days ago, and we were talking about it, and I'm like, the hardest thing for me in this situation is not to have a revenge mentality. And it's something that I'm like, it's something that I'm super cognizant of. And I'm like, when I saw that James Gunn thing, the first thing honest to God, the first thing I thought of was like, good, fuck you. And fuck everyone that's upset about this, because I look at what they did to my life over something that was so innocuous and so clearly a political hit. And now they have to deal with the repercussions of the tone they set. But I don't think that the right choice is, and the right move for us is to escalate. I think this is a great opportunity for us to de-escalate that situation. But you cannot ignore the rampant hypocrisy based solely on politics and solely on rule sets that are different depending on who you are. They have no problem destroying my reputation. I have to deal with that for the rest of my life. Like I hate when people call me a professional victim and stuff like that. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about, no idea what I went through and go through on a daily basis. Go Google my name sometimes and see how accurate those things are compared to what you know about me. And I have to deal with that, and I have to explain that away every day. When I move into a new building, or I moved into this place in Santa Monica last year. I live in a nice building with a concierge. I'm sure they've looked me up. What do they think? They're like, these are the kinds of things that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and these are the rules that the other side set. But we have to be bigger than them. We have to.
I completely agree. And when the James Gunn stuff happened, like, my first thought as well was, I haven't gone through even close or anything like you've gone through, but I just mean, I thought to myself, as seeing all the, people on the other side of politics get attacked, and the left fucking love it when it's the person they want to take the hit on. And then seeing people get upset and people defend him, and I was like, yeah, but you made the rules. We're just like, everyone else is just now playing by your fucked up rules that you've made. But then part of me was also like, especially selfishly, because I'm a massive Marvel fan, I love Guardians of the Galaxy. Selfishly, I'm like, can he please just direct Guardians, though? Can he finish that off first? But it's just...
Yeah, well, that's the ironic thing about it, is that, and this is like why nerd culture is so insufferable sometimes, is because that's why a lot of people were upset. It's like, and that's why we have to have conversations that are deeper than the base product, right? Like, that's why it's important for us to explore the texture and the contours of the different issues that we face, to make it more about than just, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but it's just a great example. Like, there definitely were people that were just upset because they weren't going to get the same Guardians 3 that they thought, or whatever it was, I don't watch these movies, that they thought that they were going to get, And I'm like, that's fucking lame. Who cares? Like this is a major pillar of the culture war we're talking about. And that's why we have to have disparate conversations, and conversations that conflict with each other and make us think and make us disagree, and get underneath the surface and beneath the soil where the roots are, to understand what's going on and why it's happening. And it's no, people say that people can conflict on what I say about mainstream games media, where they're like, well, if there was a market for it, then it would be there and it would exist. But my argument to that is, it exists almost wholesale on the bigger platforms like YouTube and Twitch and podcasting, and they're having those conversations. They're just being ignored by the people that are actually in positions of power. So it's a complicated and sort of serpentine sort of thing we're dealing with. And I'll just reiterate that I think that, like, I said the same thing about Jessica Price. I made an entire video about it, like 2 days after it happened with, she was the one from ArenaNet that got fired for her discussion with, a player of Guild Wars online, and got fired. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this to people? Like, what? It wasn't like this. I've been in this industry for a long time. It's not always been like this, and someone's got to do something about it.
And I think, like you said, we've got to be bigger. And that's why last week, James, you and I spent last week, because we've defended when everything happened with you, Colin, last March or whenever it was. We spent podcasts talking about it, and defending you, because it was the right thing to do. And we spent, even though it's like you said, the shoe's on the other foot with this James Gunn stuff, but like you said, we've got to be the bigger people, and we were trying to be consistent. We went through for like 45 minutes. We went through every tweet they'd brought up, and we're like, well, honestly, James, how many different contexts did we come up with for these tweets that weren't bad?
Good for you. Like, there was obviously ways you can obviously take. I mean, you can take anything, and you can be like, oh, this is a terrible thing, he's a terrible person, or when it's out of context. But obviously, you can take it and be like, well, it could also be in this context or this context, and it completely changes what it means. And I think that just goes to show, like, you can't just from looking at the tweets, you can't possibly know, where you stand or where he stands when he, put those tweets out, to know exactly what they mean. And I think it's very strange, because I think a lot of people are jumping to either side to be like, oh, he's a terrible person, or defending him and being like, no, whatever, this, that, whatever. And I don't think you can know either side, to be honest, obviously, like, without context. And it is just then based on politics. But like Tyler said, we were trying to be as consistent as we could. We defended you after all the shit happened, and we tried to see, like, both sides of it with the James Gunn stuff as well, rather than just sort of, trying to be like, oh, well, the left started it, so they can just take it and we'll just jump on the bandwagon sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you guys are touching on that's interesting underneath the surface, like we were saying, is that a person's now being impugned by their political views as if morality is necessarily tied into how they vote, and I just don't believe that. Like I'm not so, like, my personal opinion, I'm pro-choice, for instance, but my personal opinion is that, like, I don't know that you should necessarily be thinking you're taking the moral position by being pro-choice. I actually think the pro-life position is a pretty moral and righteous position, and not that I believe in that. I used to be pro-life, but the point is that if you come out and say that, you're an evil, Trump-voting, Republican, gun-toting Neanderthal, and, like, it's almost as if they have a monopoly on on righteousness, monopoly on morality, monopoly on virtue, and it dehumanizes people, and I'm not interested in playing that game, particularly because I know people who voted for Donald Trump, which I'm sure you guys probably don't, because you're not American, And the ironic thing is that so do these people. What, 55 million people voted for him? You don't know any of them.
Yeah.
You don't know one of them. You don't care about any of them. It's you guys said you were listening to Kind of Funny before the election, and I railed about this and I called it. Like I thought he was going to lose, but I was like, these people, are rallying around kind of a cause that they feel is important to them, and instead of dehumanizing them, why don't you just listen to them?
Yeah.
And not think that you have the answers, and not think that you're better than and holier than and all of those kinds of things. It's disgusting. It puts me off. It puts a lot of people off, and it's no wonder that so many people are alienated from games media and games coverage and entertainment coverage and movies coverage and whatever. And it's no wonder that all those websites, for the most part, are dying. It's not like people kind of ignore that part. Univision bought Kotaku and all of its family sites last year and is already looking to unload them after laying off a bunch of them. It's not like it's a good scene, and so I understand why they're scared. But maybe they should kind of reap what they sow, or they are reaping what they sow. And you know what? I think that welcoming new voices and different voices into the fold would go a long way to legitimizing them amongst the audiences again. And going back to what I said earlier, it's not. I don't mean it to sound arrogant. I know it does to some people, but there wasn't a market for conservative writing or different voices. I was the biggest writer on the biggest gaming website in the world, saying exactly these things that I'm saying now. So there is a market for it. It's just that we've been thrown away and acted like we don't exist anymore. And I think, just like you guys feel alienated. Of course you do. You think you're the only ones? There are millions of us. Millions.
Yeah.
Millions and millions and millions. And we want to talk. We like games too. We have families that we love. We work jobs and we do the right thing, and we live in a society. We live, do our best in society and do our best by our loved ones and all those kinds of things. And we're treated like we're second-class citizens, just because we think the government should be small, just because we think we should have the right to tell a joke or speak freely, associate with people. I was just telling someone yesterday, the reason I don't like tweets on Twitter is because I'm afraid that someone's going to take a like out of context because of my association with someone. That's a pretty shitty world to live in.
Yeah, it is. And even just like, because Twitter for me is a bit more of a private thing. Like, I don't, in my, private life, most people don't know what I do at all with YouTube or anything. Like, all my close friends know I have a YouTube channel, but none of them watch it because none of my friends are gamers, really. Like, none of my friends play games like that. So, or even into politics or anything like that. So I don't really talk about that stuff. So I'd be like, I don't really tell people. And this is even, I want to bring up to that point of, everyone's morality is like associated with their political views. I was raised, my parents said, don't talk about religion or politics with your friends. And that used to be a thing. Like, what happened to that? It's like these days, it's like, no, you have to talk about religion and politics because I have to know whether I want to be friends with you or not. Yeah. It's so fucking weird.
It's truly bizarre, and it's destructive. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just, completely destructive. And where we've gotten in this world is, frankly, mostly because of one side's reaction to the other side, and that's it. I'm not going to act like there's equity here between the two sides and everyone's to blame. Like, both sides have these really terrible extremes, these really awful extremes that we should lop off and ignore. There's no doubt about it. The alt-right, a terrible and destructive and frankly inherently violent, racist, misogynist movement that we should want no part of. Mm-hmm. So too is this far left that is insane in their own right. And I have no problem equating them because I hate them both. They can have each other as far as I'm concerned. But otherwise, there are just totally normal people that realize that liberalism has been bastardized, that realize that conservatism has been bastardized, that realize that there are third, fourth, and fifth ways forward, that you don't have to have this monoculture and this echo chamber that exists only to kind of, prop up certain people, prop up their popularity, prop up their ability to make a living and have a voice and put other people down and destroy everyone else in their wake. It's not happening anymore. I'm one of the people, I said it on Ruben, I scored our side a win. And I expect other people to do the same. I expect other people to stand up, and you guys are doing it and other people are doing it, because we really can win, and we really can. And winning is not doing anything to the other side. Winning is convincing the other side that we belong in this space.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it is.
And it's easy to do. Just be a nice, decent human being to everybody. And I think the thing is consistency, because I hate seeing it where I've got these people that I follow that I respect, on, let's say, the conservative side, or at least on the free thought, free speech side, that traditional liberals, like Dave Rubin's not really conservative as much as he's a traditional liberal, but then there might be other people that not saying Dave Rubin, but like that are these people that I respect and follow that then do the same thing the left is doing to the right, and I'm like, well, you can't go tit for tat. That's not going to do anything. Like, I just don't. Some people just aren't consistent, and well, if you're getting upset when someone does it to a conservative, you've got to be upset both sides, or you've got to be not upset both sides. You can't say, oh, it happened to the left or it happened to the right, so great, or that's not good, sort of thing.
Yeah, very well said. I totally agree with you in the sense that the reason that I never use the term, we know what a snowflake is, right? We know what an SJW is and all those kinds of things. The reason that I don't use those terms is because I'm like, but you guys act like this too.
Yes.
You guys are also identitarians. You're also act like, like frail, dying roses when someone says something. You're acting exactly the way they act. We all act that way sometimes. That's why you don't use words like that, because it was so obvious the first time I heard those terms. It was like, when I first heard the term snowflake, I'm like, there's no way I'm using that term. Like, because it could be so easily turned around on you. And like, what is the point? You're just proving that you're not rising above. You're stooping down to their level. And so you're exactly right. Like, we have to just get to a point of decency and respect. And the good news for both extremes is that they're actually finding themselves more and more alienated as time goes on too, because they're just being outed simply by their behavior. And it's painful to me to be called these certain names, and it really annoys me. It really ruins my day sometimes. It sucks to be categorized in such specific ways by people, and this runaway kind of narrative about you exists that's just not true. And how does it feel to be called a racist when my best friend is Hispanic? How do you think that makes him feel? Yeah. And how do you think that makes him? And how do you think that makes me feel? When he sees that, and it hurts him too. I remember. I think I've told the story. My buddy Charles, who's this black guy that I went to high school with. I went to a very like racially diverse high school on Long Island, and he saw that article about me that was written after I left, calling me a racist on the International Business Times, and he's like, "What the fuck is this? No one that knows you would ever say this about you." He was like, I didn't know that you were racist when we used to cut class for years and go play basketball and, sneak out to go to McDonald's and hang out at each other's houses. I didn't know that you were racist then. My best friend, my best friend Ramon, who's Hispanic, it would be mystifying to him too. So if it's mystifying to people that know me, then why are people just allowed to just have their own narratives? And that's a painful thing, not only for the target, but painful for the people like my family and friends that also know me, and it really hurts them. And so I'm eager to not only kind of cool down tensions between everybody, but also to do it not only for the participants and the combatants, as it were, but for the kind of the people parallel to the other people that that know better and don't want their loved ones dragged through the muck like this. It's wrong. It's the same thing when people tell me that because I'm a conservative, I hate poor and disadvantaged people. When I give lots of money to charity, I gave $5,000 of my own money to students last year so they can buy books. But yeah, I hate underprivileged people. You're right. You know, how much did you fucking give last year to these people? You know, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It's not rooted in reality, and it's defamatory, and it's wrong, and everyone's doing it, and everyone is wrong. You know.
But with the internet, like everyone's gonna sort of keep doing it. Like there's nothing you can like actually do about it in a sense. So I guess because I did want to ask you about this because you deal with this on a day-to-day basis. Do you think there's a way to deal with it, or do you think maybe because it obviously does affect you a lot with when you'll have like whether it's like a Twitter argument like yesterday you had like a bit of a discussion that was just really kind of messed up with these people saying things about you that just weren't true and taking things out of context, all this sort of stuff. But do you think there's a better way you can deal with it so it doesn't affect you as much?
I'm going to talk a little bit about this on Side Quest and on Sacred Symbols next week, but I'll talk about it a little bit here too, is because I want to hear what Chris, my co-host, has to say about this as well. But I am torn. And I think that the people around me are equally torn about what I should do. Because when I go and try to fight the good fight for us, I know that I alienate some people, and that's fine. You got to deal with that. But I also know that when I back off, I get messages from people both privately and publicly being like, why aren't you fighting harder for us? You're one of the only people that is even willing to acknowledge our existence, and treat us like we're human beings. And I am really caught in between because I am subjecting myself to such harassment and such defamatory things and such really inhumane and terrible treatment, frankly, that you kind of have to wonder about when does self-preservation kick in? And I was having a very candid conversation with my girlfriend last night where I was like, I'm in a really interesting situation where two things are true at the same time. And actually multiple things are true at the same time. I have found great success doing what I do, and I've found a voice, and I've given voice to some voiceless people and encouraged them to do the right thing and to act normally and to be decent and to have hard conversations. But at the same time, doing it has has given me such emotional and spiritual and, kind of whatever trauma that it's like, when do you let it make you so miserable that you don't just back off and stop doing it and stop subjecting yourself to it? If no one else is going to fight the fight with you, or if you're losing or whatever the case might be, when do you kind of take care of yourself, And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I just feel like I'd be a coward if I didn't fight the good fight based on what I believe in. And you can say a lot of things about me that I'm brash and all these kinds of things, and that's true, but I am deeply honor bound. And I believe that you have to do the right thing, even if it hurts you sometimes. And that's kind of what I'm up against right now in my own mind. It can be a sad, lonely thing. It really does take me out of commission sometimes.
I guess that's what I wanted to kind of get to was kind of, I guess, how you were thinking about it, but to understand that in a way, you may not, like, for example, James and I share a space, and we have our own community. We have a bunch of other YouTubers we're really close with, and we deal with similar things. Like, we'll have arguments with people that say shit to us and think we're this and that. And, we have each other's back, so I never really feel like, occasionally there'll be some massive Twitter beef, and I'll wake up in the morning, I'll check my phone and realize something's happened. I'll be like, and I'm so stressed out. I'm like, oh, God, this is the worst. But I find it best, and honestly, from what you said with people messaging you when you're not fighting back, honestly, fighting these morons half the time, or even I'd say 95% of the time, is a waste. It's a waste on you and your energy. It's a waste on your mentality. It's a waste. And if there's people out there that are messaging you, why aren't you fighting him? Why don't you do something? Like, that's, and I get that they're in a gaming industry and it's tough for them, but it's just, to me, it's like, do you want me to go down and die for this, for when you're not even willing to speak up or even willing to have my back publicly? And
yeah, it's totally
you're not alone in that, man. Like
yeah.
you've influenced people like us, and we're fighting it in our corner, and it's not exactly right beside you, but you're influencing other people, and there's other people I don't know, heaps out there that are doing the same thing, and it's like you're not alone in this, so you don't always have to fight and break yourself down mentally for it. You don't need to do it.
Yeah, you're right. I think that I think you're absolutely right. My girlfriend says the same thing too. Like I get so sad sometimes and so worked up and so bummed out and so kind of exacerbated that I take a lot of my shit out on her, and it's not fair, like it's not when she just wants to talk to me and I'm like, what do you want? But she doesn't know what's going on here. She didn't do anything to deserve that. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, all of this is hurting more the people in proximity to me, whether passively or actively, than even hurting me personally. And that is a problem, and it's one that I've like really tried to be cognizant of. I am far from perfect. Like anyone will tell you that, but I really am trying to do the right thing. And it's sad I hear you, man. Like I am a ball of stress. Like I really am. I do my very best every day to entertain and to inform and to deliver and to do all those things. But it's also a very lonely world, and it's a very exacerbating, like I was saying earlier, very exacerbating situation to be in. I wake up with with a knot in my stomach every day because I'm like, what innocuous thing did I say that's going to be twisted into something today? Who's going to call me a racist today? What 10-page thread on Resetera is going to tell me that I'm a Nazi? Who's going to drop support for Colin's Last Stand on Patreon because of what they heard, even though it's not true? It never ends. And it's a very tough world that we found ourselves in. And I'll reiterate that it wasn't always like this. There are a lot of people that have come lately to this, but it has not always been like this, and that's the saddest part of all, is the coverage is getting worse and the environment is getting worse. So like, what is the point? If one was getting better or the other was getting better, then maybe we can deal with it, right? But like, if everyone's becoming a reactionary of trying to fight everyone else, it's bringing down the entire art, and it's bringing down like I said earlier, our ability to have reasonable and constructive dialogue with one another. But it affects me on a personal level. I very rarely ever talk about it. I think you guys are really the first people I've ever really talked to about it. It does affect me, and it is unfortunate. But I do it to myself. Like you guys are saying, I do it to myself. But like I feel like if I don't swing for the fences when and where I can, then I'm letting people down. And I am, and it's.
I think they're letting you down more than anything, to be honest. I don't think you're letting anyone down by not always fighting. I think they're letting you down by putting that pressure on you that's making you just said your life, you wake up every day with a knot in your stomach. That's messed up. Like, you don't need that in your life. Your personal life is the most important thing. And you can't let idiots that are faceless and you'll never meet or talk to in your life, like, change that for you, because some people in the conservative world in gaming can't say anything publicly. Like, that's not fair.
Yeah, it's not even that. That's the thing that frustrates me the most, and I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most about people that know me and people that know, like, I'm very candid with what I know and what I learn with people that I trust, and there's a lot of cowardice amongst like-minded people in positions of power in our industry. There just is. Why am I always the one and a few other people, even John Bain, rest in peace, and other people that would fight the good fight? Like, why are we the ones that have to say things and take the brunt so you guys can support us behind the scenes and say nice things to me at E3 or fill my DMs or my text messages with really nice things, and but you won't ever say anything publicly because it is deeply coward. Like, I am not a coward. I don't think anyone can possibly say that about me. Like, I've put it all on the line to say what I believe. But guys, the ironic thing about it is that what I'm saying is not even extreme, and that's the important thing to like not lose sight of. I understand why you might be offended by a Richard Spencer. I get that. He's a fucking lunatic moron, with horrible ideas. But why am I being conflated with that? What have I ever said that conflates with that? And so part of you is like, you stay silent, they're going to do it to you anyway. If you're loud, at least there are people that are curious enough to know, like, wow, this isn't true. My friend Jules Watson, who I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he is an indie developer, lives in Texas. He makes the Mutant Mud games on Switch, and he's like basically a Nintendo indie dev. And he was on my show, Fireside Chats, a few weeks ago, and then he tweeted out a link to it yesterday, and someone tweeted at him and was like, were you aware of Colin's politics before you did the show? Because I don't want to give him a click. And he was basically like, what are you talking about? You know, like, what are you talking about? And there's just not enough people standing up and saying that. You know what I mean? Like when Brandon Jones from Easy Allies came on my show last year for Fireside Chats, and the whole hullabaloo that surrounded that was just mystifying to me. You know, and it's just like it's just. It almost makes you wonder, like, why do you even talk or say anything at all? Because people are just going to say whatever they want anyway. They're just going to pretend that you said something else anyway. You know?
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, why? Let it affect your life. Like, maybe, you know, and I think James and I feel the same way. Like, neither of us are cowards at all, and that's why we both, you know, have in a lot of ways the connection that we do with the podcast. And we've been through a lot of shit together, James. Like. And dramas, yeah. It's crazy, but I've always told James and I have had many arguments and on podcast arguments about, because I'll tell him, like, dude, why are you letting this affect your life? Like, why do you care? Why do you always reply to these people and fight these people and put yourself in these dramas? Like, it's not worth it. Fuck those people. They're not going to listen to you anyway, and it never gets anywhere. No matter how much you try it, it's never going to get anywhere.
That's true. That's true. But like, I think the reason, I mean, I think I can relate sort of to what Colin was saying was, I think whenever I see things on Twitter that are belittling other people's views, like, I mean, I've seen a bunch of like people, especially around the time with the whole drama that happened with you, Colin, was people on Twitter like talking shit about other people without really knowing who they are and just saying, like, you know, even if like they're not extreme views, like they're just different views, and people, you know, will lose their shit over him. There'll be these threads and these, you know, these Twitter things with people ripping into people and like, you know, just sort of completely, you know, saying these ridiculous things about people that I know aren't true, and other people obviously would know aren't true, and it's just all this ridiculous shit trying to ruin people. And I feel like I have to defend it because I can't see anything in the replies. I'm like, all of these people are just agreeing with each other, and it's all just complete bullshit. And I'm like, I just have to say something, and sort of in that moment I'll do it. And maybe sometimes I'll look back on it later and be like, oh, I could have left that, or, you know, maybe there was just no need. But I just feel like there's not enough people fighting for, you know, people like us that we believe, like the things that we sort of believe in, that I'm just kind of like, well, I might as well, you know, pitch in and just, you know, just sort of fight back, I guess.
I guess it's just picking the hill to die on, though.
Yeah,
sometimes, because sometimes I'll see you tweet, James, and I'm like, dude, there's not your hill to die on. Like, there's a lot, and like anything. And then when you've had your dramas, James, you know, I've always, anyone that says shit about you that I know is not true, you know, that pisses me off, and that's, you know, a personal thing to me. So I'll, you know, defend you at the end. And James, you and I, when Colin was going through his stuff, we got into arguments with Ubisoft developers on Twitter and friends of ours. Like, you're a moron. Like, you don't know who this guy is. Like, that stuff, that's worth it to me. But then there's some things that are pointless, like randomly, you know, in the day about a video game, that then somehow an argument about Assassin's Creed Odyssey becomes political in Twitter, and then people are calling each other pieces of shit and hate each other. And I was like, how is that worth it? You know?
Yeah,
so
I don't know,
it's just about picking. It's not about not fighting. It's just about, I think, picking the battles.
I think it's knowing when to leave as well. Knowing when to be like, okay, we're not getting anywhere. It's time to leave. But sometimes it's like, well, they've tweeted me. Now I have something to say back, and then they'll do the same, and it goes on forever. And really, there should be a point when you're like, yeah. I mean, looking back on a lot of things that have happened on Twitter, I'm like, yeah, maybe I could have stepped away there and just ignored that, because it's not worth it at that point. But at the moment, you're like, no, I really should say something back, I guess. Especially, like, I mean, obviously if it's like an argument about video games, like, obviously who cares? But when it gets political and when people are, you know, saying shit to me like, oh, you must think this because you said this, and it's like, well, no, that's not true. Like, where are you getting that from? And that's when I'm kind of like, well, I need to, you know, be like, no, you're wrong. Even if I guess it doesn't really matter what they think. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it just shows that there's like a deeper texture to everything in terms of, you know, what is right for you personally, what is right for you perhaps professionally or financially, what is right for you in terms of your pride and your honor and what's right. And It's very hard to balance those things. A lot of people come to me and said, like, what do you have to be upset about? You make all this money and you're more successful financially and professionally than you've ever been. And I'm like, I'll tell you, like, that's true, but like, you know, it came at a significant cost, you know, and I don't know that, you know, I don't know that it was or is what's worth it. I don't know what's worth it. I'm figuring it out as I go along. I'm learning, and I make mistakes constantly. And I find myself in situations all the time where I'm like, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I am mentally weak in that way. There's no doubt about that. I have very little restraint sometimes when I feel like there's something wrong. But it cuts both ways, because that was an asset and a tool that people were happy to use when I was around them at IGN, and kind of funny, frankly, that, you know, I would always go to the mat for Greg. You know, if people looked at Greg the wrong way in front of me, it would be a problem for them, you know, and so I guess I was just expecting to be treated similarly by people that once called me friend, and some people that have jobs and got their first gigs because of me, and were on my podcasts and were elevated because of my work, and us including them in Podcast Beyond or PS I Love You or Kind of Funny or whatever the case might be. But you know, I'll tell you what, loyalty is certainly dead, and I learned that. And the people that, like, you know, the Ryan McCaffreys and the Damon Hatfields and the Per Schneiders and all these guys that stood by me vociferously throughout everything are the real champions and the real heroes that put themselves out there. And the real cowards are the ones that, like, hid behind the mob and talk shit when months before they were in my house drinking my bourbon, or I brought them to dinner, or I, you know, traveled with them, or they slept on my couch because they had nowhere to be or whatever. I could go on and on and on and on about that shit, you know, but it is ultimately, it's just petty at the end of the day. It just is.
Yeah. This might be a question you don't want to answer, and that's cool. But I guess in terms of the Kind of Funny stuff, like, you went back on the last thing I've ever watched of Kind of Funny was your last Game Over Greggy show, and you went back on, and it seemed all good, like, in that sense. But was there? I mean, obviously there was more to it that was just seemed like that went unsaid. Are you happy that you kind of left it and you know, you went by the stance of, you know, if they're not around, I'm not going to talk about them if we're not in the same room together, sort of thing, publicly, for them to defend themselves or whatever? Or do you wish you'd been a bit more, maybe, I don't know, open about that stuff?
I don't. It's hard, man, because like I was in it. You know what I mean? Like, it was. I barely remember any of that. Like I barely. I remember tweeting the joke, because I was laying in bed with Erin. My girlfriend's an ER nurse, so she works like really weird hours, and she was coming home as I was getting up. And I remember that. And I remember tweeting it out, taking a shower, getting into an Uber, and going to work, and not knowing that anything was really happening. You know, like that. I was like that. You know, it was the beginning of the end for me with that chapter of my life, and there was a lot of. It's hard to explain. Like I there, depending on who you're talking about, it was either fine or incredible amounts of animosity building up between us, depending on who you're talking about, you know? And and I felt kind of edged out of my own company in a way. Right. And I walked away from it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And you know, actually Polygon's writing a big story apparently on Greg, and they interviewed me for it. And I told them that I really thought I was doing right by them by leaving, how and when I did. But like I was like, if I'm gonna fall on my sword, I should just do it quickly so they can move on, and they can kind of chase the vision that they wanted together, which was not the vision that I wanted for our site. I mean, I wanted us to be a kind of a ragtag, kind of like what I do now. You know, I don't know that you can even if you did know, I don't know that there would be a right or wrong. But I just felt like I wanted to do right by them at the very least, so that they can move on unencumbered from me. And I didn't expect that it was going to blow up the way it did. I knew that the joke blew up, but I thought that by me leaving, everything would kind of calm down. I didn't expect that it was going to injure so seriously that brand's traffic and that brand's Patreon support and stuff like that. And I didn't mean to do that to them, you know? And
they didn't. To be fair, you didn't do it to them. Is quite the opposite from my perspective as a viewer. Like, loyalty is so important to me. I felt betrayed as a viewer. Like, I loved Kind of Funny, man. Fucking loved it. I was watched every week. I felt betrayed by the whole thing. I felt like everything I heard from all of those guys other than you was a lie. That's how I felt. Like I'm passionate about it, but even though I don't know those guys, but that's just how I felt watching it.
Yeah, I think, I think it's tough, man, right? Like I knew Nick for a long time, and I knew Greg for a long time, and Kevin and Tim were kind of newer characters in my life, but I had different interactions and different relationships and different tenors of relationships with these different people, and when you have that amalgamation, it's hard to go into business with your friends. Like that, there are certain pieces of conventional wisdom that are just true, and for a reason. And that's one of them. Is just that it was hard, and it started to blur the lines between personal relationships and business. And I think that I thought that my personal relationship with Greg specifically was way stronger than it was at that point. Like even though we needed space from each other and we were not getting along the way we used to get along, that happens when you're just together constantly and kind of at odds about the direction of the business. But when push came to shove, I had assumed it would have gone differently just for Greg and I. I don't mean to be mean, but I don't really care about anything else. Like like at the end of the day, it's like it didn't really matter. Like when people were reaching, wondering like, oh, Colin tried to be on the show and Colin reached out to Greg to be on the show, and it's like, no, I didn't. Like that's not true. I reached out to him because I was like, I'm thinking about you, and I wonder if we can repair our rift with each other. I don't give a shit about anything else. I don't want to be on Kind of Funny. I don't want to. I like the other guys, but like we don't need to be friendly or on board with each other. Like I was really worried about that, and because that meant something to me. Like it meant a great deal to me. And regardless of the business, regardless of where we went, if we went in our different directions, I said for a long time that, and they knew that I was going to be the first one to leave. I just don't think we expected it to go down that way, and I do really feel bad that it caused a rift in their community, because I was actually really, my intent was to try to do the exact opposite, as opposed to staying around and fighting the good fight basically in front of the camera and being like, we're going to just have this out here, and it didn't quite work out that way. And I appreciate that you guys and others don't think that it's different and think that maybe it's not my fault or completely my fault or whatever. But I do feel sad about that. And I it's like I told Polygon, like I truly believe that they will recover to and beyond what we used to do in terms of traffic and all those kinds of things. I just think people are being a little hard on the situation too, but I just didn't think I was kind of made to feel that I wasn't that important. And so I believed it, and I don't mean to be dramatic, but I believed it. Like I was like, I'm clearly not that important to this operation. So it's anyway.
Your link to those guys, I think, is what made it so different to anything else in gaming, because there was someone like you there as well. And it's not to like, I'm not trying to like blow smoke or anything. I'm just saying, like, when it came to, let's say, when you said something is like an awesome game, whatever, I'm like, I'm going to listen, because you don't just say that about anything. I'll go back to one of your last Kind of Funny bits, was you and Greg talking about Horizon Zero Dawn. I wasn't sure if I was going to buy Horizon Zero Dawn. And then I listened to the two of you talk about it, and, Greg's a passionate guy and would, is very, in the sense he would be very positive with almost everything. But you were like, no, I totally agree with all this sort of stuff, and, going on about it. I was like, holy shit, I need to buy this game now. And then I was straight on it. I'm like, thank you for that, because it's one of the best games I've ever played, sort of thing. So
yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. Like I try to be honest, and I think we talked about it on the first episode of Sacred Symbols. But Chris, when I pitched him the show, he was like, I just want to make sure I can say what I want to say, regardless. And I'm like, of course. Like, yeah, we can literally shit on everything if that's how we really feel. We just have to be honest. I'm not saying that the other guys weren't being honest. I'm just not as enthusiastic about a lot of things that other people are, and that's just who I am. So I think that did grab, draw people towards me. But the fact of the matter is, guys, is like I loved that brand. I founded it, and I think that like my DNA is on that brand. And I was one of the really two major people that brought people in the beginning to kind of seed it, as it were. And I'm proud of that. And I want them to succeed. And I wish them, without reservation, I wish them the very best. It just wasn't my, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I reached that point since, like when I started doing politics and that started making me miserable. I'm like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be either. But at least like the biggest mistake could have been for me to stay at IGN, because then I would always have wondered, they offered me a lot to stay. I would have been very comfortable there, and probably still been there today. but we turned down those offers to leave, and that was the great choice, because then it allowed me to explore all these different things, and here we are today, you know, for better or for worse, learning as we go. And you know, it's very sad, but at the end of the day, like, you know, I'll always feel sad that Greg and I went down the way we, you know, did. And you know, it's funny because when Polygon interviewed me, they sent me some questions, and a lot of the questions were about like the beginning, like how we found each other, and then the end, right? So like kind of like when we didn't know each other, and then just a lot of negative shit. And I was talking to Aaron about it, and I was reading like my responses, and I'm like, you know, like these are honest responses, but it sounds so negative. And I emailed the guy back, and I was like, you know, there's more to the story than this. Like there's a lot of like really great shit and triumphs and good times in there, and I'm really afraid that our story is just going to be reduced to this. And so if you have any questions about the substance of our relationship and the you know, the podcast we built together and how we dominated together for all those years and stuff, and what it was like living together and being around each other all the time, I'm happy to relay some positive stories to you, and they weren't interested, you know, because that doesn't sell. And I'm afraid that that's always going to be our legacy, but I don't want it to be that way. You know?
Well,
like, do
you think that one day you guys, when enough time passes, you'll be able to repair it?
I don't think there's ever going to be a reparation, but you know, repairing is like one thing, but like, first of all, the ball's totally in his court. I'm not reaching out ever again. You know, like I did that, and that's that. I'm not mad that he didn't want to talk to me. That's totally his prerogative. I totally understand his point of view, but knowing that he had cancer and knowing you know, that I've been ill too, and things happen, I was like, I can't possibly live with the fact that like, what if I sign on Twitter one day and I find out that Greg died in a car accident? I'm not trying to be dark, but like, what if you find that out? And then you never tried, you have to live with that for the rest of your life? That you never at least tried, you know? And so once I did that, I felt like a big burden off my shoulders, but it didn't really remove the sadness. You know, those are two different things. And so I you know, I can't possibly be the one that like reaches the hand out anymore, but I also feel like it's a situation where, you know, you have to try to do the right thing by the people that you really know, and we know each other in a very deep way, and there's no saying what the future can hold, but it's ultimately going to be up to him to kind of catalyze that, not me.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Wow, that was that got very intense.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
I love it. No, I appreciate, yeah, you know, everything you're saying, man. Like opening up, means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get to talk, I don't really talk to anyone about this. My girlfriend actually just walked in. She's like, "You're getting deep," and it's like it is deep. It's I'm not saying anything wrong. I'm not saying anything that, you know, is divisive. I'm just being honest. Like it's a sad situation, you know, and you know, I just don't want to be responsible for. I didn't want to be responsible for just like, I couldn't live with that regret, and now I don't have to. Like it's not, the ball's not in my court anymore. I tried to do the right thing, and maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. I don't know, but I certainly, you know, I'm certainly happy with where I am professionally and all those kinds of things. But you're always gonna have pains about what happened in the past, and you're always gonna wonder if things could have gone differently. But they, you know, they didn't, and all I can do now is try to do the very best I can and try and endeavor, and leave it all out on the field, and let and we'll see what everyone thinks of it, you know. That's all I can do. But I'm sorry but I am very sorry that our schism has hurt a lot of people, you know. And I don't mean that from a traffic or monetary standpoint. I mean that from like it really took people for a loop. Like we were with each other and in people's lives for like better part of a decade. And I understand why that's difficult for people to let go of, and I do apologize about that. I'm sorry about that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you've got. Like, I understand, like, you know, if you're in the situation, but I don't think you've got anything to be sorry for. Like, these things happen in life, and I mean, you can't put. I guess you can't put everyone's emotions on yourself too much, because that can be a big burden to sort of bear.
Yeah, it is, but I'm a very emotional person. I've always worn my heart on my sleeve, and you know, I just like I said, like I'm not worried about it, but I'm interested in just the legacy. I hope that when time passes, that people will realize that most of our relationship and friendship was a very positive thing, you know, and really quite important to both of us. And I feel like that's lost, and I understand why that's lost. But I hope that with time, people will realize that it wasn't that last chapter does not define the journey. It doesn't, like it doesn't. And I was disappointed that Polygon didn't really want to hear more from me about all the positive things, but that is what it is. I can't do anything about that.
You mentioned during this last portion where you talked about getting into politics and history with CLS, and that you weren't happy with that. Like, I'm curious about what went on there from that change from when you went to Kind of Funny, you started CLS, getting into history and politics, and now you're back with gaming. You've got all these amazing podcasts you're doing, like Knockback and Fireside Chats and Sacred Symbols and everything, as well as, of course, your side quests and everything. Like, what was that step like, and what do you think's next for you, especially with you talking about you liked the Kind of Funny sense is like this ragtag, lower budget sort of, thing, and doing that with CLS now?
Yeah, I don't know what the future holds. Like, it's I have some interesting opportunities that have been thrown at me that I've that I'm maybe interested in pursuing, like writing a game or writing a book or something like that. But I think that CLS as it stands is pretty much what it's going to be for a while. I still love politics and history, but I found that in this like we were saying earlier, in this very divisive climate that we're in, you can't listen, like, who am I to say that I'm telling it like it is? Some people can think I'm a complete moron, like, I don't know. But I feel like you can't pick and choose in this climate to be just consistent. Like you guys were mentioning earlier, consistency is really important. Like, you have to choose a side. And I'm not interested in choosing a side. And I found that I was just getting it from everyone. And I'm like, I can't live like this. We were talking about, like, kind of mental health and all those kinds of things. And people think, like, oh, you did it because your CLS was failing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, not really, guys. Like CLS was making way more money than I was making. It Kind of Funny when I made this transition. It's not that at all, really. It actually hurt me with a lot of people. I lost a lot of patrons when I transitioned, the people that wanted me to hear that kind of stuff. So it's actually quite the opposite. It was just not making me happy. And I also felt like I kind of let them win. And by them, I mean, like, the people that tried to drive me out. Like, I didn't think about what happened to me for a few months, like what I went through, because I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. I didn't have the time. I had to keep moving and I had to get the content out. But when I really had those quiet moments to think about it, I realized that I was, I let them win, and I love this thing. I let them ruin this thing for me, and I felt like my voice was missing, and the people wanted it back, and so I brought it back. And now with CLS, we have the best of all worlds. Like, there is politics. Fireside Chats is an incredibly political show usually. But we're able to do all these other things too. And like I said earlier, I have an audience that is willing to kind of come along for the ride. And I'm so honored by that, like that they let me kind of make mistakes and try new things and see what sticks and see what works. And so I don't know. Like, I've had some interesting conversations in recent weeks with people about, growing CLS or making it bigger. And I don't know. I have this, honestly, like, I can't get away from this idea of doing like a really large podcast network. Like, what if CLS was, like, right now it's 4 shows, but what if it was like 10? But you still got in for like the same amount of money. You got early access to everything for the same amount of money. Like, nothing changes. It's just like more value. And it's different voices, not mine, Like, that's kind of the thing that I'm playing around with and I've been talking to people about, but I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. Yeah,
wow. Well, so what would how would you manage to do 10 podcasts? Would you get other people involved, sort of thing?
Yeah, I think that's the idea. Like, that, the idea would be that I would acquire podcasts, like that already exist, or start up new ones. Like, what if there was a sports podcast, and what if you had a network of podcasts, like, where you subscribed on Patreon for $5 a month for no ads, early access, but you had like a smorgasbord to choose from every week, as opposed to just like you have a lot to choose from now, but like if you were a sports fan, you had a sports podcast, you had a political podcast, maybe one from the right perspective, maybe one from the left perspective, maybe you had a movie podcast, and all of these kinds of things. And then you could just come in and pick and choose what you want, And it's kind of like a high tide raises all boats situation, where like the monetary situation doesn't change. You're just bringing in way more people, and that's how you pay for it, So that's kind of what I'm playing around with. It's not necessarily a novel idea, but I don't know. That's a lot to think about. I already work enough, so I need to figure it out. And honestly, doing something like that would need an investor, and I'm not entirely sure. People have offered to invest in Colin's Last Stand already. I'm in the black. I don't really want investment, but that would probably require me to give up a piece of my company. And I don't know that I really want to do that. So it's a lot to think about, I don't know.
I mean, it'd be good to be the sole owner sort of thing, especially. It's a lot less sort of, I mean, it can be challenging dealing with other people and stuff like that, I guess. So
Yeah,
that makes
definitely.
sense.
Definitely. Yeah.
I guess wanted to jump into some gaming stuff, and because with our community we have a lot of like Assassin's Creed fans. That's how we started out before both of our channels we expanded into different games. People will have to want to know this, and I already know, mostly I think what you're going to say, but what are your thoughts on Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft as a company sort of thing? I'd like to hear your perspective on it.
I think Ubisoft's a pretty great company. I think that they release a lot of similar games. Like the Ubisoft open world kind of prototype game is a thing for a reason. Like the checking of the boxes and stuff. I'm not a huge Assassin's Creed fan at all. I don't really like the series, but I also realize that I haven't played one since 3, and I know that the series has changed a great deal, and I've been encouraged, starting I think with Syndicate, that the series has, from my complaints about it, has gotten much stronger. So I have no problem with it. I think it's popular for a reason. I think that Ubisoft's kind of shameless with it, but as long as people keep buying it, it's like what Todd Howard said about Skyrim Remastered the other week, where he's like, if we'll stop releasing it when you guys stop buying it, and you can't really blame a business for kind of running something into the ground if they're making money on it. So I enjoy Ubisoft as a company. I'm a huge Far Cry fan, specifically. So that's and I love The Division. So yeah, I think that they're one of the I think they're an immensely likable publisher, personally, for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, well, with Assassin's Creed, I think maybe Syndicate's not the right one, but I think if you like, open RPGs, Origins is for the most part probably the best one they've done since like the Ezio trilogy, I think. I've just heard that it's exponentially increasing quality, from a gameplay perspective specifically. Oh yeah, so the story's an absolute mess. The lore is just atrocious now. Like everything's all over the place.
Yeah, I'm fucking exhausted with it, man. I'm just listening to you talk about Assassin's Creed. I can't do it anymore. But
James has gotten tired of it. He's just like, yeah. Well, when we've got about 16 writers on a brand that don't even talk to each other, it seems like, yeah, lore gets messed. But yeah, as a gameplay perspective, you're right. Like, it's certainly gotten better in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's on my. I wrote down. I actually have it here on a pad. I wrote down it's probably like 20 games that I want to go back and play that I missed. And where is it? Yeah, Assassin's Creed Origins is on there, and then Syndicate. So I got to. It's on there. Who the hell knows? There are other games I want to play right now, but But I'm totally open to it. I'm open to it. I think things change, and I'm open to that change. I think it would be pretty shitty of me actually to just rail against the franchise about how bad I think the gameplay is for years, and then they fix it, and then I'm like, That's kind of like it's a little disingenuous. So yeah, I really should jump in.
What about, James? You'll love this.
Okay.
Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, no, that's not for me. I don't know.
Have you played it though? Have you tried it? Have you played it ever?
No. I've never played it. I have zero interest in a Square Enix fusion of weird Square Enix shit in Disney. It just doesn't appeal to me.
Hey, look. I thought the exact same. And then Tyler brought it up, and I was like, that sounds dumb, man. You need to stop. But eventually it broke me, and I tried it, and I can't explain how fucking good it is, man. Like, you've got to try it. You really do.
Well, yeah, I've heard. I'll tell you right now, like that couldn't be any lower on my list. But it's so sad. But there's just way too many other things there's just way too many other games that I've not played. Like what's even on my list here? I don't know. I'm reading it now. Like, I don't know. I never played Danganronpa 3. I never played any of the Evil Within games.
It's within
Undertale.
How dare you? This just like, can't stand for this. This is ridiculous. I spent like 30 minutes, like this probably 3 years ago, to James, got on a rant. I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, you've got to play Kingdom Hearts. You've got to play Kingdom Hearts. You got to play it. He played it, and it's his favorite franchise now.
It's so weird because I've never liked. I looked at it, I'm like, oh, it's anime, you know, it's combined with Disney, Final Fantasy. Never been into any of it, to be. I mean, I like Disney, like, sure, but like anime, I was never a huge anime fan, and Final Fantasy, I'd never played any of the Final Fantasy games, and it all just looked like JRPGs. I don't like JRPGs either. And I played it, and I don't know, something clicked, and I fell in love with it. So I don't know. Maybe it's worth going to, even if you think, you know, this looks completely opposite of something I might enjoy. I don't know. You might.
Well, I'll make note, but I'm not making any promises either. I can't make any
that's
promises.
Fair. That's all we can ask.
Yeah,
for. That's all we can ask for. Because I just know. I've never talked to anyone that's like given it a chance and then gone, oh nah, it just wasn't for me. I'm telling you. it's something. Anyway, I won't bang on about it too long. What games are you most excited about coming up though, at least for the rest of 2018?
I think Mega Man 11 is obviously the big one for me, October 2nd. But there are really, actually, it's funny because in terms of the AAA game, like AAA sphere, there are really only 7 games that I even care about for the rest of the year. I wrote them down: Dragon Quest 11, Spider-Man, Valkyria Chronicles 4, Mega Man 11. I have Assassin's Creed Odyssey on here. Red Dead Redemption 2 and Fallout 76, and that's basically it. And then there are a bunch of like small games. You know, Chasm comes out on Tuesday, which looks great. You know, so I'll be busy, and I think that in terms of like, you know, the kind of the late games here, like Red Dead and Fallout, those are big, you know, 100-hour games. So I'll be plenty busy playing those. So there's not too much. You know, by volume, it's kind of nice actually. By volume, there's not that much for me to look forward to, which it feels manageable, you know.
Sure.
Yeah. I feel like I haven't been playing anything lately.
Yeah, I agree. We said this last podcast. There's
nothing going on.
Yeah.
Like I still want to play that Jurassic Park game, but
that's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's a bit of a laugh, but yeah. Other than that, like after God of War, I was just like, I just don't know if I need any games ever again.
Detroit
That's just
was great. Have you not played Detroit yet?
No, I haven't played Detroit yet.
That's very good.
What is it better than God of War? Like what?
I suppose it depends who you ask. Colin, what do you think? I mean, I think I already know.
Yeah, I think Detroit's my game of the year so far, but I think most people, you know, people get mad about that. I'm like, God of War and Detroit are totally different. I think God of War really hurts itself in the end game. I think the longer you play it, the worse it gets. But in my opinion,
did you platinum it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So did you not enjoy? Like I platinumed it too. I loved doing like it was a bit. I guess I'm a kind of OCD when it comes to like games like that. Whereas I kind of enjoy I can just put a podcast on and spend my time in Nussbulheim going through the gas world trying to get dumb echo, like whatever they're called, echo gems or whatever. Like I just loved it.
But yeah, sure.
Echoes. Oh, you missed echoes.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, missed echoes. Yeah, right.
I never did that.
Yeah, no, I was really shocked. My major kind of critique of the game is that I'm shocked by how bad the little thing, or like how bad the really easy stuff is in the game, and how great all the really hard stuff was. Like they really nail all the things that are difficult. But then when it comes to like the last 1% of game development, like the UI, the maps, the quick travel system, like this shit sucks. Like I was like, I like the map, specifically the in-game map, the way you track quests and stuff. It's bad. Like it's bad. And I don't. Yeah, and true, it really doesn't come out. It doesn't come out until the end. Like you don't really notice it until you're trying to do everything, and then you realize like nothing's being tracked properly. There's like the quick travel system is obtuse and weird. So I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's a great game. I think it's a total triumph for Sony Santa Monica. But that really turned me off from like thinking that it was like the be all end all. I think Detroit was an incredibly solid, incredibly riveting, well made game, and I really endorse it like wholeheartedly. I think I was totally blown away actually by it. I certainly didn't go in with any expectations, considering Beyond Two Souls was pretty disappointing. So I was quite enamored with Detroit, and I think it was great. My girlfriend, who doesn't play many games, played it herself too. She loved it. So yeah. Yeah.
I played it with my girlfriend like a couple of weeks ago, and she loved it as well. It was one of those games I went into it sort of like you said, not really thinking anything. Like I'd never played Heavy Rain, although I knew a lot of people, you know, liked it, and I'd never played Beyond Two Souls, and I heard a lot of people didn't like it. But I sort of went into it like, yeah, I guess this will be a good time. Like, it's a PlayStation exclusive, and you know, in recent years, PlayStation exclusives have been absolutely killing it. So I was like, well, I know it should be good, like it should be. And I went into it, and when I remember finishing it, and I remember with the credits, I was just like, that was fucking like an experience. Like, that was a really, really good time. I was really happy with the ending I got as well. And I remember just watching the credits, listening to the music, and being sort of reflecting on it, and being like, that was actually really, really, really good. Yeah, I was really pleased with Detroit.
Yeah, I really highly recommend it. And you guys asked me to give you like a 10 or 15 minute warning, so I'm giving you that now.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I guess before we get into Patreon questions, like I did have one quick topic I wanted to touch on, which was just single player games in general, like and their future, in terms of like when you've got something like a Horizon Zero Dawn, a God of War, these exclusives. My opinion of it is we're going to get these games less and less, in the sense of traditional single player games. There's no sort of interconnection with online stores and microtransactions and these sorts of things. Like that's always, we're going to be seeing that more and more in third party games like Assassin's Creed, like Far Cry and stuff. But if you want the traditional, just this is the game, single player, there's no secret multiplayer or pay structure sort of inside it, that's going to only really be from like first party games. Am I wrong on that?
You're probably not. I don't like when you really do think about Bethesda's probably the only other company that would really endeavor to do what you're talking about other than Sony, because I don't think it's even first. Like Nintendo does it by necessity, and they don't really, frankly, don't count in this. You know, Chris and I were talking about it on Sacred Symbols, where I'm like, man, like when the new consoles are shown, you're gonna see how bad Switch is gonna look by comparison. And I like Switch, but what Nintendo's doing is kind of on their own island, so I'm not really talking about them in this particular conversation. But you know, I'm riveted by the idea of a single player game that's supported like it's a multiplayer game, and I don't think it's something that is explored much. Like Fallout 76 is a great example. They say the map's 4 times bigger than the Boston map in Fallout 4, and you can play online and multiplayer. I don't care. I'm not offended by that like some people are. I think that's great. But is it possible to have like a single player game that is not only fed a few DLC packs like single player games are, but something that's supported actually for a long period of time that doesn't necessarily require another player? So like think about like Destiny, but much more playable by yourself. Like, is there money to be made there? Because there is certainly money to be made on single-player experiences, or you wouldn't be getting them anymore. So I think now we're going to see in the next few years more of a quest to try to make these even stickier beyond the DLC offerings, right? Like Fallout 4, you know, got its one major offering with Point Lookout, that was Fallout 3, with Far Harbor. And I'm like, well, what's stopping them from just endlessly supporting this game? You know, keeping people engaged in it and enamored with it. And I like that idea. Like, learn from the multiplayer sphere to make the single player sphere much stronger. So I do not fear for the single player experience in the single player game. I think it's alive and well, and I think there's a lot of evidence for that. And God bless Sony, because they're the ones that are really doing it more than anyone. And I think that's awesome.
Agreed. Hopefully Xbox can come back. I used to be an Xbox fanboy. I never even bought a PS3. And then when, you know, after the next gen, like I had to get an Xbox again because I love Halo. But I got a PS4 as well, and then I played all the Uncharted because I never played and played The Last of Us, everything like that. And I'm like, wow, Sony's by far the best game publisher that's out there right now. So I'm hoping for Xbox to come back, hoping for a new Fable, hoping Halo Infinite's not terrible. You know, it's just it can be sad.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, dude. Like, I think The Last of Us 2 will have a multiplayer component, and Dreams has an inherent multiplayer component, I guess. But it's really interesting to think about, like, you know, Horizon, God of War, Detroit, Spider-Man, Days Gone, The Last of Us, you know, inherently, Ghost of Tsushima. These are all single player games. It's really an amazing gambit that they took, and it worked. But I also realized that it left a major gap in their catalog for multiplayer games, and that's a problem. So they need to balance it. That the ironic thing is that they don't really have a studio internally that can make the game that they need to make for that, and for that they're going to need to contract a studio to do it. And I would expect that would probably happen eventually. You know, for there to be like a battle royale game or an online persistent shooter or something Destiny-like that is only on PlayStation, I think would be a big win for them and make their catalog a little more robust. You know, I fully anticipate that that's going to be an initiative in addition to this solid studio structure that they have that makes single player games. And actually, with Guerrilla scaling from 250 to 400 employees, I think it's pretty obvious that they're going to release a Killzone game, and I wonder how multiplayer centric that will be. We'll see.
Interesting. I guess, James, now we'll jump into Patreon questions to finish off. We got a few good ones. A couple of ones that people didn't understand the point of it, because we do an exclusive, like we do a second podcast that's only on Patreon, and like it's run by like we'll post a topics thread, and it'll be like everyone just posts the topics, and that's what we talk about. And someone thought that's what that was, so that was not the point of it. But yeah, we've got a few great questions here. James, do you want to get that up?
Yeah, I've got it up. It's right here. You want to just start at the top?
Yeah, start at the top.
All right. First one is from Mark. We say that because it's Mark and he's got a question mark. So like, yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, he said, "Hey Colin, long-time fan. I was wondering how work life compares from IGN to Kinda Funny to CLS. In what ways, I guess you're saying, are they similar/different? Do you miss any aspects of your old workplaces?"
Oh yeah, I miss lots of aspects of my old workplaces, mostly because I didn't have to do everything. Yeah, like working at IGN was a very structured thing. I was a workaholic there, but I had a very limited purview of like what I had to do and like how I did it, and that's why we were so good at it. That's what I was saying before about like when Polygon interviewed me, where I was like, I'd love to tell you guys these stories because we really were like a well-oiled machine, you know. But you know, so there I didn't have to worry about like, you know, my healthcare, and I didn't have to worry about, you know, ads being sold, and it was just literally just editorial, you know. And so working at IGN was a great blessing. It was the great time of my life, really, and I'm super thankful and grateful for that. I miss it all the time. I would never want to go back, but I you know, I think other people understand what I mean by that. You know, it's kind of like a different chapter of my life, but I miss it all the time. What a wonderful way to spend one's 20s.
Yeah.
And then Kinda Funny, I miss Kinda Funny all the time. I you know, I think sometimes about how funny a lot of it was when the going was good, you know, and how silly it was, and how much control I had in the beginning over like our trajectory and the shows we did. Like the reason that there's a morning show is because of me. The reason that there's a topical podcast is because of me. And I'm so proud that those ideas stuck and worked to this day. And so there's a cool little legacy there. Like I didn't invent Podcast Beyond, but I did invent the Great Game Over Greggy show. I didn't invent IGN PlayStation, but I did invent the morning show, you know? And so there's like a little bit more of an ownership there that I think is really cool to like reflect and look back upon. And it's almost like, you know, what Steve Allen and Jack Parr and all those guys that used to do the late shows in the United States in the 50s and 60s. No one talks about them anymore. They talk about Carson and they talk about Leno and all those guys, but it started with them. And I kind of feel like maybe like in a very D-list way on the internet, that's me. You know? And so I think that's kind of a cool thing. And you know, specifically, I think, you know, it's funny. I think the thing I missed the most is like the back and forth with Kevin. We had a lot of a lot of chuckles. I really love Kevin. I think he's a really, really solid and stand-up person who taught me a lot, actually. And so yeah, but it's different. Like I work 60 or 70 hours a week now, and everything I have to do everything. And after E3, Aaron and I went to Palm Springs, which is I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's a really like ritzy part of California where like typically like rich people go to like.
It sounds nice.
And we rented a house there for a few days. And those were the first days off I took all year in June, and like true days off, like nothing to do. And it's a really hard, you know, I told you guys I wake up with a knot in my stomach every day because there's always something to do. You know, like right now I'm worried I have to, you know, businesses typically file tax extensions so that they can get their business in order. But my taxes are now due on the 15th and I've not heard from my accountant yet. So I'm like worried about it. Now I have to worry about that, you know? I am selling sponsorships for Sacred Symbols and I haven't heard back from the people. I'm not sure like what the wording is for the next episode. I have to worry about that now. My healthcare is, you know, I pay for my healthcare out of my own pocket. I have to worry about that now. And so all those kinds of things as well. It's a difficult situation, but the other side of the coin is that you have agency and control over what you're doing, and it can be to your exact specification. So if you work hard enough, it's exactly what you want, and you have no one to blame but yourself if it doesn't go well, And so it's a totally different experience. CLS compared to Kind of Funny and IGN is just totally different. It's way harder. But I this is the life I asked for, and I'm doing the very best I can,
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, the next question is from Gene. He said, "Hey Colin, loved your history and political videos since last year, and I learned a lot from them. So my question is, what is your number one favorite game of all time? And if you do have one, why is it your favorite?"
Oh, Mega Man 3 is my favorite game, and I think a lot of that is nostalgia, but I also just think it's a very solid, one of the great platformers of all time, one of the great shooting platformers of all time, 2D. So yeah, I happen to really have an affinity for that series, and nothing will ever surpass like what Mega Man means to me. I don't know if it's based necessarily solely on quality at this point, but it certainly is at least partially predicated on that. So yeah, that's my favorite game.
All right, cool. All right, next one is from Casper Carroll, who said, "Hey Colin." Everyone said, "Hey Colin." Anyway, love all the work you do. Lately, I've listened to the Mega Man podcasts and was wondering, where would you recommend a newcomer to begin? Inclusion the X games. Thanks, and keep on doing you.
I think that the X series is a great series too, specifically the first 3 games, and they just released collections for those that you can buy on PS4 and Xbox One now, and Switch. I personally think the classic series is easier, and I don't know if that's because I have like a savant like skill at it or not, but it's like one of the few games that, well, it's not one of the few games I guess I'm good at, but it's one of the few games that I'm like excellent at. So I don't think that I'm an objective observer on skill level needed to play those games. They just are natural to me. But I think that like the beauty of the new generation of consoles is that there's just a really great way to access both the classic and X series in their entirety by buying the collections. And so the Legacy Collection, the Mega Man Legacy Collection on PS4 or Switch or Xbox One is a great place to start. And I would think that Mega Man 2 is probably a great way to jump in. If you like Mega Man 2, then you're going to like every other Mega Man game. If you don't like Mega Man 2, then there's no reason to move forward from there.
Awesome. We'll just do 2 more, if that's
Okay.
cool, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this one's from David Bindis. Hey Colin, yeah, literally everyone says, "Hey Colin." Hey Colin, love your videos and your personality in general. Can I ask what you generally think about the overreaction the UK had when Trump visited, and most importantly, because of the latest James Gunn controversy, which we talked about already? What's your opinion about people using tweets from either the past or present, from situations you were in, to basically ruin people's career? Furthermore, will you now listen to Kill Connor Club now that you have been on, or for $1 join Kill Connor Clubhouse? Well, I think Colin just said he's far too busy to be listening to that, but yeah. What are your thoughts on the Trump visiting the UK stuff?
I thought it was a little silly. Like I guess I live in a country where if the head of state of Britain came here, I don't know that anyone, and they do. If Theresa May came here, I don't know that anyone would really care. So it was a little like, and I have no problem with Theresa May. I think she's fine, but I'm not like super engaged in British politics. But I thought it was a little silly. I don't know. I guess this is a weird thing to say, and I know a lot of people won't agree with it, but I just don't really understand how it's your problem. It's our problem, and we have to deal with it. So but he's no JFK or something like that. I don't expect people are gonna come out of the streets and celebrate and throw roses at him. But I thought it was a little extreme, and it kind of feeds I do think that the left is losing sight of the fact that these kinds of things just feed the narrative and help Trump. They just help Trump. Trump's, little known fact, Trump's approval ratings are higher than they've ever been right now. So it's like it's not working. Whatever's going on is not working.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a little weird. I don't care. I don't like Donald Trump. If you want to make fun of him or be mean to him, it doesn't bother me at all. But I just wonder what purpose does it serve? Other than to undermine the so-called resistance to him to begin with. He feeds off that kind of shit. He loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Where we are. All right, next one we've got is from Oscar, who said, "Hey Colin, thanks for being one of the most rational minds out there in this time and age. I wanted to ask if you've ever played any of the Metal Gear Solid games, and if so, were you a fan? Personally, it's one of my favorite gaming franchises, as I think Hideo Kojima is one of the best game directors of all time.
Yeah, I played Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, and a little bit of 3, a little bit of 4, and a little bit of 5. I love Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. I think they're fantastic games. I remember playing them both for the first time. I was in high school when they both came out. And, you know, Sons of Liberty particularly is a really fantastic game. They control like shit. Obviously, they're kind of like gameplay relics. But up through 3, I think 4 and 5 are a little different in that regard. But, yeah, I think... I don't know. I kind of lost the plot, like, quite literally. I'm just like, I don't really... Actually, with Metal Gear Solid 5 particularly, I played it for like 10 hours, and I was like, this isn't... The intro to it was so cool. I'm like, this is great. You know? I knew it wasn't going to stay that way, but, like, the way it starts and the way it's very linear and story-driven and all that, I'm like, this is awesome. Why didn't you just do this for 15 more hours? You know? As opposed to opening it up into this kind of weird, not Metal Gear game. So... It wasn't... I have no problem with it. I know that a lot of people love it. It's just not Metal Gear to me anymore. But I can also say that I didn't play the games thoroughly when it was still Metal Gear. So, yeah, the last Metal Gear game I beat was Metal Gear Solid 2, and I was in 12th grade. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up for Patreon questions. And also, I guess we'll start wrapping up this podcast. So, Colin, I just want to say... Thank you so much for coming on and joining us. And,
definitely.
You know, you're very generous with your time to come and do that. And even I've talked about this on this show before. Last year, you helped me and let me interview you for one of my final university assignments. So, like, I appreciate that, you know, that you've done that and all that sort of stuff for you. It means a lot.
Oh, you're very welcome. My default answer to everything is no all the time. And I've tried to, just because I, like, can't fathom putting more on my plate. And I was even like that at Kind of Funny in IGN, but I've been trying to say yes specifically to smaller channels, smaller shows, fan-run shows, like people that are very passionate. I have like very little interest in, and I've said no to many like big interview opportunities because I'm just not interested, because I feel like it's very promotional and it's also always the same shit. You know, they want to talk about over and over again. It's like, no, there's no real depth or nuance to anything. So I'm very happy to do shows like this, and I'm you know, I'm honored that you guys asked me. I have no, you know, it's not a big deal at all, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. No, it's a big deal to us though. So
yeah, thanks for coming on. Really, yeah, we really appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners do as well. Like people fucking been asking us to just try and get one for ages, so I'm sure they'll love it as well.
We kept a real secret because we did announce we were supposed to have a guest on at the start of the year, like a voice actor, and we announced it the week before because we had the time organized, then it cancelled, never happened. So we've just been, other than Patreon, and even then I'm like, you know, this is happening, but I don't want to, I'm just so skeptical about announcing guests before we record something. So I can't wait to see people's reactions to this, because we know we have so many listeners that love you.
Well, I'll be happy to promote it too. So send me a link when it goes live, and I'll take care of it on my end.
Thank you very much, Colin.
Yeah,
well, we'll let you get back to work, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Take care of yourselves.
All right, well, thanks everyone so much for listening. If you did enjoy and you want more content like this podcast every week, the Kill Con Club isn't on, and exclusive content as well, head over to patreon.com/as always and pledge just $1 or more for exclusive content and all that good stuff. And some of the sweet vintage lads we have here already pledging to us are King Richard III, Bullsack47, Tman or Travis, Billy the Team Tynamite Captain Robertson, Josh Devillier, Damian, Casey Wood, Mario5380, Lumistrad, Josh Jordan, OllieTheDane, Ben Modorox, TheHumbleWorm, Elstakoniwum, Emil Katborg, Austin, Sjors, GdayItslaZer, Prudhvi Muvva, Julli, Adam Sundling, HBarts12, SaggyTits, Jayce the Last Medici, TheACMJS, James and Lad, Yazen, Joe the Sexy Boi Smith, Brian Ford, Connor Durose, Ginger Nut Jared, Georgia Long and Fox, Joshua Mora, Gene, Marcus Blackburn, Seth, Oscar, Ravjai, Son of a Bitch, OG Adogo, Brendan or BQ Overlord, and Pink Flame 313.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening to this podcast, and if you want more right now, we've just released a new Kill Con Clubhouse exclusive to patreon.com/as-always, and we'll be back next Sunday live on YouTube for Kill Con Club episode 80 with the 4 pillars. So get excited, look forward to it, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.
Why do you have to say goodbye afterwards?